All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going through trying to teach you Java, the Java programming language, mainly by using a series of iterative programs based on a payroll system. And I am up to Chapter 10 of our book, and we're talking about inheritance. And in the last lecture, I built this file, which is my interface file, which just has in there my constants that I'm going to be using throughout the program. So I'm going to go back to payroll now, which is here. All right, and I forgot. I just was thinking about the. Yep. Okay, I've got that done. All right. As always, I'm going to come in here and put in my comments. Always a good idea, as you've heard me mention several times. Comment as you're writing the program. Don't go back and do it later. All right, so this is going to be the stuff, for lack of better words, the variables defined for this class will be common to any type of employee, be it hourly, commission, salaried, or piecework. All right, now probably should have made this a block comment. Okay. Sometimes when going in and trying to make something better, you end up making it worse. That's what I want. Okay. So, all employees will have a first name. I'm trying to figure out why I made this final. I don't like that being final. I may end up changing it back later, but I'm going to say private string, first name, and that of course will be our employee's first name. Now probably, just thinking about this, I probably, instead of calling this payroll, I probably should have called it employee. But you know what? As far as I've come with this, I'm not going to change it now. So all employees have a first name, a last name, and a social security number. All right. All right. Let's have a single constructor. I've talked about constructors and overloaded constructors already. So I'm going to assume that we're going to have a single constructor here. In fact, let me go and add a bunch of these. All right. So this will be the payroll constructor. There'll be just one. Remember, that's public payroll, the name of the class. All right, so we will suppose that we have passed in here a string. Let's use the same names. First name, a string, last name, and a string, SSN. All right, so the same names here, 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 as I have here, here, and here, which means I have to use the keyword this, which is fine. This dot first name equals first name. This dot last name equals last name. And this dot SSN equals SSN. Now, that's it for the constructor. So this is supposing that all employees, now, what I forgot to tell you is, very important point, I'm sorry, that's abstract. This is a generic class. So I'm not going to be able to actually create an instance of this class. But what I'm saying with this is that all employees have a first name, a last name, and a social security number. That's what I'm saying. So I want to do my getters and setters. Again, I can do those in different ways. But remember, probably the easiest way is to come in here and where was that? Was that under build? Well, we'll let Google find that out for us. How to do setters and getters in Java using Intellij IDEA. There we go. This is the one I used before. So it is under code generate. Okay, that's fine. So I'm right here, code. Generate. Let's do the getters first. We'll do all three of these. All right. Then we'll come back down to here. We will again do code, generate. Now we'll do our setters. We'll again do all three. Boom. All right. So I'm going to add a couple of these things in here. So here we're going to put a comment in that says first name getter, last name getter, SSN getter, this will be our first name setter, our last name setter, and our SSN setter. Okay, we've got a lot of this done already. So I'm going to pretty it up as I do. Sorry if this bugs you. I know sometimes people tell me you go way too nuts with the comments, but that's it for the first name. It's going to return a string. Good. So let's just copy this. All right, that takes care of that one. All right, so those are our three getters. So we have our constructor, which expects us to be passing in 3 strings. The first string standing for the first name, the second string for the last name, and the third string for the social security number. Then I've got my 3 getter functions, which each one of which is returning a string, be it the first name, the last name, or the social security number. All right, so let's do our 3 setters. And if it seems to you like, wow, you're being really kind of deliberate with this, that's only because I am. And what I mean by that is I am purposely trying to write this slow so you can watch what I'm doing, and ideally at least, you'll be able to follow along. So, I've got my getters, which I've already gone over. I've got my setters, okay? And what I'm going to do in here is I can go in and I can make checks like we looked at before, all right? In other words, I can check to make sure I've got something in here, all right? So I can say if first name dot equals, if it equals the empty string, then we want to pass back, unknown first name. Otherwise, we want to pass back the first name. So we can do that. Print. So let's just grab this. I'm doing minimal validation, in other words. So this will have to become last name. That will be an L. And that will be last name. All right. And then finally, we'll say here, SSN. Now, students who have had me for many classes, or even for one class, will tell you that I'll say, if you don't understand something, start by playing computer. All right? So what are we saying here? If the first name is equal to the empty string, then we want to take unknown FN and assign the value of that to first name. Otherwise, it's not empty, so whatever we put in, assign that to first name. Then do the same thing with the last name and the same thing with the social security number. All right? So we've come in, we've created 3 variables. All right? They are instance variables because each instance, each employee or payroll object that we create will have a first name, a last name, and a social security number. We did a very simple constructor. And probably now I should change the constructor to call this set first name, set last name, and set the social security number. Now I'm getting errors. Why? Because I have to pass in the first name, the last name, and the social security number. I think. Well, it doesn't like something though, so let's see. Oh, we used SSN here. All right, so it's saying here, incompatible types. So the set was expecting a string. These are not, okay. This will look just like this. set first name, set last name, and set SSN. Now, because I'm the way I am, I have a tendency not to use the same name. So I'm going to call this FN. I'm going to call this LN. And I'm going to call this just S. All right, which means I have to change this to FN, LN, and S. So when I come in here to do my constructor, I'm going to call set first name, and I'm going to pass in that first name I was given, which will come in and check, and if it's empty, meaning I passed in the empty string, it'll set it to unknown FN. Otherwise, it'll set it to whatever I pass in. Same thing with the last name, same thing with the social security number. All right? I think this is cleaner than the way I did it before. You may or may not agree. And I don't know if there's universal agreement with all of the Java programmers in the world. There probably isn't universal agreement on anything. All right, so we've got our variables, we've got our payroll constructor, we've got our first name getter, our last name getter, our social security number getter, our first name setter, our last name setter, and our social security number setter. All right, it's time to write another method here, and that will be, I'm going to overwrite toString, and I'm going to say return a string representing a payroll object. All right, so public string toString. So this is overriding the quote normal unquote toString method. Hopefully by now you're to the point where if you're looking at my screen and you see this red thing here, it's because I'm not returning anything yet, and I said I have to return a string. All right, we'll fix that in just a minute. So, return string dot format. I'm doing this a little bit differently. %s, which means string. %s. Oh, let's put a backslash in here. And we'll say SSN backslash T %s. These %s's are placeholders. I'm going to put it over 3 lines so you can see what's going on here. The first one I'm going to call get first name. So that placeholder right there is going to hold the person's first name. The second one will be, probably guessed already, get last name. And the third one will be get SSN. All right, so that's me overwriting the toString method. I think I've got one more to go. And here, create an abstract method that must be overridden by any class that extends the payroll class. In other words, this class. This might be a little confusing. Current class. All right. And that is simply going to be public, abstract, double, and you know what? We'll call it earnings. All right. And that's it. That's my whole payroll class. about 90 lines. And as you saw, we had our variables, we had our constructor, our getters, our setters. We overrode the toString method, and we created one abstract method. This is the only method that's in here that is abstract, which means that as I create, and in the next lecture I'm going to create hourly, then in the following one I'll do commission, then in the following one I'll do salaried, and then in the next one, which will be interesting because I can't find the code, I'm going to do piece worker. But each one of those will have to have an earnings method in them. All right, now I'm looking here, and you see how we start all these with a lowercase, so I'm going to make this lowercase e. I'm not going in and I'm not taking the time yet. All right. I'm not going to try to compile this or anything else. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. But I am going to come in and do a file, save all. Now, in the next lecture, what I want to do is I want to come in and do my hourly class. So I'm going to right mouse click on here, do a new Java class, type in here hourly. All right, let's see, it's kind, yeah. All right, and I'm going to say automatically that extends payroll. It's giving me an error. Class hourly must be declared abstract, or it must have our earnings method. Well, we know that already. Okay, so that's saying that I need to have this method in it. All right. Now, I can't make that abstract in there, so I will get rid of the word abstract, public double earnings, and I'm just going to put in for right now, just so I don't get an error, return 0.0. All right? Now, I'm still getting an error here. There is no default constructor. We're going to create that in a minute. All right? That's a good stopping point, I believe, for where I am right now. So again, so far, I've come in and I talked about what we're going to do for the first video. Then, the second one, I created the interface file. In this one, the one that's ending right now, the third one, I did my payroll. And in the one to come next, I'm going to do my hourly. All right, I'll be back with that very shortly.